This is big breaking news. The U.S. House of Representatives has just passed a new bill, and this is going to affect things like your taxes, Social Security, Medicare, and the economy will all be affected from this bill that was just passed. So let's get into all the details here really quick, guys. Please just hit that like and hit that subscribe. I'm posting multiple videos every day, keeping you updated, and it just helps to get these alerts out. I appreciate that. So they just passed this bill tonight, all right, February 25th, Tuesday. They just passed this, all right, and some of the things that are a part of this are things like no taxes on tips, right? There's been some new proposals that have been introduced, and there's also been some previous proposals that were implemented during Trump's first presidency. All right, he implemented tax cuts that were temporary. They only lasted like 4 or 5 years until they expired, and those are going to be put back in place. We're going to go over all the details of that. And there's some new things that have been announced too. So no tax on tips. This eliminates federal income tax on tipped income aimed at service workers. No taxes on overtime was just announced and passed. Exempt overtime pay from income tax. And also no taxes on Social Security benefits. Removes taxation on Social Security income, which could cost over $2 trillion over 10 years and raise concerns about Social Security solvency. All right, that's what this article is saying here. But that's also going to increase the benefit for people every month. It's kind of crazy, all right? Just that you get taxed on every single angle, right? You work for 30, 40 years, you're taxed every paycheck going into Social Security, and then to get that money back from a benefit after you worked for 30, 40 years to get your Social Security, now you're getting taxed again on it just to get the money back that they were supposed to just be holding on to for you for a few decades. All right, it doesn't even really make sense. And there's a lot of little things like that where it just seems like we're being double taxed on certain things. It doesn't really make sense. Also, new announcements for deductions and tax credits and things like that too. All right, the child tax credit has been extended. So this extends the $2,000 per child credit, which has a refundable portion of up to $1,700 and could go up to $2,000. And this is instead of dropping back down to $1,000. So they extended the $2,000 credit. This was something that was put in place a few years ago. So if you have kids, I have 3 kids, so that helps a lot. $2,000 credit there. Also, there has been a SALT deduction as well too. It says this removes the $10,000 cap on state and local tax deductions. Okay, so normally you can only deduct up to $10,000 for your state taxes and property taxes, local taxes that you have to pay. And now you can deduct the full amount for your federal taxes to bring your income down, which will then reduce your tax burden, all right, on the federal level. All right, so that's huge as well too. Some people are drowning in these state and local income taxes right now, certain jurisdictions and certain zones, and that's going to help them a lot. All right. Also, there's a lot of announcements. All right, so I'm just trying to hit them all. It says pass-through business deductions have passed as well too. It says this continues a 20% deduction for qualified business income for sole proprietorships, partnerships, and S corporations, which would otherwise expire. All right, so that's big for people that are self-employed and have a S corp or a sole proprietor. Also, the standard deduction, it's keeping the higher standard deduction, $15,000 for singles, $30,000 for joint filers in 2025 rather than reverting to the previous levels, which were 6,350 and 12,700 for joint filers from 2017. Okay, so a lot of these things were like revamped in the past few years, like during the pandemic and things like that. A lot of these benefits were announced and they are codifying into law to extend and to keep these things around, right? Make it a law so they're not going to expire, right? So that's good for people too. That's a big difference, right? 15,000 deduction versus 6,000 and 30,000 deduction versus 12,000 for joint filers, right? Also, it's saying here there were some spending cuts that were announced as well too, right? Things like Medicaid could be affected. It says over the next 5 to 10 years, a part of this bill, there could be up to $880 billion in cuts for Medicaid. Also, there's suggestions of up to $2 trillion in cuts across areas like Social Security, Medicare, food stamp assistance like SNAP and EBT, and potentially even veterans benefits. Certain ones could be affected by this, right? That's what's being reported. There are some cuts coming with this too, right? So tax cuts are happening, which is good, but also some cuts are happening as well too. But a lot of these programs are insolvent and are major issues that do need modifying, all right? It's something that needs handled gently, all right? We don't want to like throw the whole economy into chaos and put a bunch of people in a bad situation financially that are depending on these things. But there does need revamping of a lot of these programs, and a lot of them are not paying for themselves, and a lot of them have a lot of fraud too. Okay, look at all these Social Security numbers that they found that are active in the Social Security system where people are 150 years old. One of them, they said somebody was like 300 years old, something along those lines, that was in the Social Security system and has a active number, all right, before the country was even founded. They have Social Security numbers for date of birth before the country was even founded, okay? People that were 300 years old. So I think if a lot of these programs are cleaned up like this, a lot of the fraud and waste and stuff that's not even going to real American citizens is cleaned up, then I think these cuts will be a lot less noticeable than if they just cut it without getting rid of the fraud and waste and abuse, right? And these cuts are going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years. So it's not just going to be suddenly, right? So we're also seeing increased funding and spending for border security. There's also been a boost in defense spending as well, to a $85 plus billion annually budget increase for defense spending. So another $85 billion on top of the whatever it is, $830 billion that we spend every year. So now another 85 on top of that for the next 4 years has been passed into law as well too. Also, it's being reported here for things like business taxes as well too. There's been some changes to that. It says that they're maintaining the 21% corporate tax rate that may be lowered to 15% for companies that are manufacturing inside the US, right? So 21% corporate tax rate, 15% if you are manufacturing goods and products inside the US. So that's huge. That's going to entice a lot of companies to come to the US and start producing things here, So let me know what you guys think down below. This is just passed, right? Tuesday night, and it's headed for the Senate. It most likely will pass the Senate because this is just a budget resolution, so those can pass with just a simple majority. Okay, so that's why a lot of times when these big budget bills pass, there's a lot of like extra gravy in with it, because normal bills require at least 60 votes, right? But these budget resolutions only require a simple majority of 51 votes, which they can get pretty easily, especially with Vice President J.D. Vance, who could act as a tiebreaker for any 50-50 situations like that. And it most likely will pass, right, and then go to Trump's desk and become law, most likely within the next week, maybe by the end of this week or early next week. So let me know what you guys think down below. Hope you guys are staying safe, staying prepared, staying stocked up.